Robert Kiyosaki, and this is another episode of Capitalist Manifesto. And I wrote Capitalist Manifesto simply because I hate to say this, but America is going socialist, and after socialism comes communism. And one of the reasons people don't understand the process is most people have never read the Communist Manifesto. And I studied the Communist Manifesto at military school because if we're going to be military officers, we had to understand who we're fighting. So I graduated from military school in '69. I went to flight school for the Marine Corps. And in '72, I was flying across the beaches of Vietnam in my helicopter, and I saw communism. I saw the French chateaus. The French Indochina was a very rich society until they got wiped out by Ho Chi Minh. And I'm not taking sides. I'm not taking sides here. But when you see revolution and insurrection and unhappiness, when the people rise up, it was eye-opening. So I'm flying along the beaches, I'm looking at these French chateaus, I'm going, what happened here? They're all burned out, bombed out. And I've been around the world enough times. I was just in Romania looking at the same beautiful chateaus, and they're empty. And that's what happens when communism takes over. So my guest today is a person who actually personally has experienced what happens when capitalism turns to socialism, turns to communism. And her name is Nally Gallant. She is the author of the book Self-Made, and she is famous. She's been on my friend's show, Donald Trump, The Apprentice, and all that. And the thing I'm most impressed about, she comes from the world of media. She is the first Latina president of Telemundo, one of the most powerful media companies in the world. And she speaks to a large group of very important people. So I'm very happy to welcome Nally to the program to share her story of why her family left Cuba when she was 4. So Nally, thank you. First of all, congratulations for all your success. And welcome to
the... I've learned everything about money and about, I love Rich Dad, and I just want you to know that a lot of my work with Self-Made is inspired by your and Kim's work. And I just want to honor the service that you guys have provided for so many of us and generations of us that are minorities, that no one really has taught us this stuff. We come to this country and we don't know. So I'm just very honored to be here with you.
So could you give us a little about your background? I mean, as my friends would say, ¿Qué pasa? How in the world, how in the world do you become a Latina president of one of the most powerful media companies in the world? How did that happen?
Well, it happened, I think from, I didn't know anybody. My parents came here with no money. And so it is possible. And that's why I believe in becoming self-made. I know that this is the only country in the world that you can come here with nothing and in one generation become self-made. And so, a lot of people have asked me during the pandemic, what do you do in the middle of a crisis? And I said, when you are someone like me, you realize that crises are part of life. Life is an obstacle course constantly. And that's why being grounded in your finances, in your money, in knowing what to do, you can arrive at a crisis with grace. My first crisis of my life, Robert, was leaving my country at the age of 4 and arriving to this country at the age of 5 from a communist regime, where my parents from one day to the next told us, we're leaving today. I had to leave my toys. I had to leave everything. Our house was taken by the government and we had to come to this country. And all I remember is that trauma, that listening to my parents every day say, why didn't we put the money in another country? Why didn't we take the monies out of the bank? Why didn't we diversify? Why didn't we think that they didn't believe it could happen? Because they, like so many people, were pro the regime. They were people that grew up in Cuba during a dictator, a right-wing dictator, Batista, and they felt as young people like, this isn't right. We want everyone to be equal. We want everyone to have money. And their ideology was very pro that revolution. And they didn't realize what was to come. And, so many of my African American friends and other friends say to me, what's up with you Cubans? And why do you, whatever. And, sometimes I feel, and I say to my other Cubans, we're not explaining this correctly. We're not messaging it correctly because, we're not vulnerable about it. We tell the story like, a lot of my Cuban friends in Miami sound very just right wing, but they don't tell you that they're really in pain, like the Venezuelans, like so many other Latin Americans. And because in this country, the history narrative is black and white, and we don't explain the stories of other people, whether it's, Cubans, Venezuelans, Colombians, Mexicans, Asians, Chinese, Korean. We don't know that when we come here knowing so much about what we're now witnessing today. We've been in right-wing and left-wing dictatorships. Neither one have been good. We've been in totalitarian regimes. We've been in places where from one day to the next, we've lost everything. And I say this in my book tour, I say to women, you better get your finances together because you don't think you're gonna wake up one day and have to go move to Russia and learn Russian and start all over again. But it can, and it very well may happen. It's happened to all the rest of us. Why wouldn't it happen to you?
So let me ask this question.
Yeah, it's been scary.
So when you see today, 2021, you see these caravans of people coming out of Central America, Latin America, and all this. They're coming to the border. What goes on inside? I mean, it's hard to leave your home. And most Americans don't know what it feels like to run. When you see those thousands and thousands of people, my heart breaks.
My heart breaks because I think, again, the narrative we've been fed about immigrants is that they're all economic immigrants that are just want to make more money in this country and this and that. People don't realize that we too someday may be immigrants, that a lot of these people are fleeing. Again, when a lot of my friends say to me, what's up with you Latinos? You don't speak up. I go, it's not that we don't speak up, it's that in our countries of origin, when we spoke up, we would be called desaparecidos. Desaparecidos means the disappeared. You'd be picked up, put in jail as a political prisoner, never to be seen again. And in some parts of Latin America, you get picked up and you're in a grave, in a shallow grave, and you're dead. All because of your political beliefs, all because you say something. There stops being freedom of speech. And so like when you have parents, I'll just tell you my story. My mother was a farm girl of 9 children in rural Cuba, where they saw a lot of injustices. I don't think a lot of people speak about, the black and white issues that existed in Cuba, in Venezuela, in the Dominican Republic, in the Caribbean. Very similar to what we're witnessing today. Cuba was a segregated country, and there was a lot of injustice. And the Cubans, whether they were, the younger Cubans who were, even the white younger Cubans or the mixed Cubans, because a lot of us are mixed. We're like, this isn't right, this isn't fair. So all of their intention was to change a country that had stemmed out of a coup d'etat, and it was a totalitarian regime.
And that was Batista.
That was Batista. And a lot of people don't know that Batista was a mixed race man who was a military guy who entered the coup by winning over all the Cubans of color. And then he got power, and then he became like kind of a right-wing dictator. And so the masses, people don't talk about this, the mass of people in Cuba were very pro the revolution because they felt that Cuba could be more socialist. And they were, like so many of us, when I came to this country, I would yell at my parents because I go, this is the country of Martin Luther King. We want to be more socialist. We all want that. Who doesn't want goodness? Who doesn't want things to be fair? But unfortunately, when you then go and live in what's supposed to be a socialist regime, but then they have to make choices and they go for the other extreme. When you go into extremes, all hell breaks loose. And what happened in Cuba is that the country went communist. I don't think people realize what happened, but we've seen whispers of it. When you see that everybody runs to the bank in Greece and they can't get their money out, everybody that had money in the banks didn't have money to pay them back. When the regime changed and the currency was changed. I don't think we know that in this country. And I always tell women, my women that I talk about self-made, I said, you better have cash at home, because I can tell you my parents would say, why didn't we have more cash at home when all hell broke loose? You know, when you go to a bank and it says in the United States, you only have $250,000 guaranteed. And even that, they have 20 years to pay you back. If everybody goes to the bank at once, do you really think the bank has the money to pay you back? We have to learn. Robert, you talk about this stuff all the time, right? So my parents, you know, in their innocence in Cuba and in their desire for a better country, they didn't realize, oh my God, all hell's gonna break loose and the money we have in the bank is gone. And the next thing they do is there's a police in every block, and if they hear that you want to leave the country, they put a stamp in your house and say, everything in this house is owned by the government and it's inventoried. And the day you leave, if one thing gets taken out, you go to jail. So my parents went from being these young, naive, you know, kind of pro-revolution people to all of a sudden a series of things happen where, you know, there's no freedom of speech, and now you're being monitored by the local police of your block. And people are divided and conquered. People in the same block are being told, go snitch on your neighbor. Your house is now inventoried. So if you leave, the government has everything of yours. In some cases, people that have land or farmers or people that own businesses, their commercial business gets told, this is a building of the state. You're gonna get 600 pesos a month and we take the rest of the rent. So all these things began to happen. And my father says to my mother, we have to leave. My children cannot, and my mother's like, no, I'm not leaving. Because she was very pro the country. And she kept thinking, the Americans are gonna fix this. They're not gonna let this go bad. And my dad says, if you don't leave, I'm taking the children and I'm leaving. And the other thing people don't realize is when we come from these countries, it's not like you just go, oh, let me buy a plane ticket and leave. The government makes all these things so that you can't leave. So they say, okay, if you're a family of 4 and you want to leave, you can leave, but only people that are born on these years can leave. So in order to leave, you have to cheat. You have to take all the little money you have left and forge all your passports and all your things so that your little family of 4 can leave with the dates that they say. And you're freaking out because when you get to the airport, you're worried that they're going to catch that 1 or 2 of your passports are forged in order to meet the requirements to leave. These are the kind of things my parents had to hollow out the heel of their shoes so my mother could take her wedding ring and her cross necklace. And that was the only thing we took. And we left with the shirt on our backs to Spain, which was the only country at the time that would take us, until we found the Presbyterian church in the United States in the late 60s decided to take 1 Cuban family each and adopt them and take them in. And so we got on a queue to be chosen. And we came and lived in southern New Jersey in an all-American family house of a Republican family who took us in because the wife and the husband had lost both their sons in Vietnam. And they were distraught and suicidal. And their minister said to them, the only way you can heal is by helping someone else and doing service. And so we had this magical experience, which I think is beautiful to tell because something for all of us to think about how to deal with immigration. We lived in the basement of this Americana, think of it as Lucy and Lucy's American husband, right? In this family that didn't speak Spanish, we didn't speak English. They were mourning over their 2 sons and my mother and father were mourning about leaving their country. They took us in. They found my dad a job in the Chevrolet factory, painting cars, when my father had been an entrepreneur in Cuba. My mother became a seamstress, and these people helped us get on our feet. And so I grew up with my parents, you know, crying over spilled milk, crying, saying, why didn't we know? Why didn't we? Should have taken the money and put it in Spain. We should have done this. We should have done that. And very upset, but loving this country and saying, this is the only country where you can speak honestly. This is the only country that takes you in. This is the only country that allows you to make money and start again. And so I grew up really being very patriotic because my parents told me this is the best country in the world. So my childhood, and like so many immigrants' childhood, was very painful because I had to become, at 5 years of age, the translator, the therapist, the one that answers the door, who's going to be at the door, the one that tells my parents, it's okay, we're going to do okay. And a lot of my friends say to me, how come you're so good with money? Well, one of the reasons is because I've listened to Robert Kiyosaki for many, many years. But the other reason is because immigrants are natural born entrepreneurs. We're not expecting anyone to give us a handout. We were not told by our parents, this country owes you anything. We have a work ethic like no one else. And we're like, you know what? Prince Charming is not coming to save me. And Prince Charming is not a mate, a corporation, or the government. No government is going to save me. I'm going to save me. And so I have been helping my parents since I'm 13 years old, 7th grade, 12 and 13, selling Avon, helping them pay for my school. And I have been making money since I'm very young and understanding that my duty is to help my parents and my country. And so it is very painful because we are so divided right now. And I feel also, to be fair, that, you know, it's not, the answer isn't just in, discussing economics. It's also that our messaging to each other is not loving enough. We are not listening to each other's stories. I love my African-American friends. I've toured the country teaching African-American women and their families to become self-made. And I say, you do not know us. You don't know the rest of us. We want the best for you. We know there's been many injustices in this country. To deny that would be insane. But the way out of these injustices, you can't force people to do what they don't want to do. But what you can do is make money, build wealth, and give back to your family and your community, and change those communities from us feeling like victims to being empowered economically. All empowerment begins with economic empowerment. And Robert, you taught me that.
No, it did not. Yeah, I mean, look. If you become the president,
I just have to share with you because I love all your work so much. You know, when I read Rich Dad Poor Dad for the first time, and it was such a game changer for me, because I grew up in Teaneck, New Jersey. It was all African Americans and Jews. And I was the only Latina family. And I also grew up with Latinos that were like very, we had the Catholic thing, and it was all, but money was the root of all evil, and blah, 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 and boo, boo, boo. And then I had my Jewish friends who were like, hey man, gotta make money, and blah, blah, and so I had a similar experience. But I think the one thing that I would add to your story is, because I'm an immigrant, and because I also know the pain of immigration and having parents that left their country in their late 30s and had to start all over again, and were feeling like, I don't know if I have it in me to do this all over again. And that's why I'm very compassionate to all people of color, because I know we have a lot of barriers to entry to understand all this, because we have religious overtones, we have cultural overtones, some of us have caste system overtones. And so we want to believe that the system will save us versus us, because sometimes our own systems in our own cultures are holding us back.
So let me ask,
And that,
let me ask you this question. I mean,
yeah.
how much, look, I'm really on it. You know, I worked for Xerox for 4 years. I found immediately, I'm not a corporate guy. I am an
I'm
entrepreneur.
not either. I'm not
I
either.
know, but how in the world do you become, but you didn't start with Telemundo. You started another.
I'll tell you how I started. You're going to love my story. When I was a sophomore in high school, a nun who, by the way, I love her and I still love her, my English teacher, I wrote a story for school that was kind of deep and kind of depressive, I guess. And she said to me, I don't believe you wrote the story. I think you plagiarized it. I think this is an Ernest Hemingway story. And
Wow.
I was so upset because as a Latina immigrant, and all of you that are watching that know this, we're such goody two shoes because our parents tell us, be quiet, you know, and Asians are like this too. Keep, you know, be quiet, lay low, don't create a problem. I would never do anything wrong. So I was sent home for 3 days to school, to home from school. And I told my parents, la monja, the nun, suspended me for 3 days. And my parents go, apologize to the nun. I go, but I didn't do anything wrong. And it doesn't matter in this country. You know, this isn't your country. Just that, whatever, ask for forgiveness. And instead, I wrote an article to 17 magazine, which was the teenage magazine I read at the time, about why you shouldn't send your kid to all-girl Catholic school ever. And I trashed the school. And 3 days later, the nun, I come back and she goes, you know what? I researched all of Ernest Hemingway and I see that actually you wrote it. Wow, you get an A. And that was it. It all blew over. 3 months later, I get a $100 check in the mail from 17 magazine and they say, we're gonna publish your story. And I go, no! And article comes out and it's a scandal. I go to school and my worst fear is to get asked to go to the principal's office. And I go to the head nun and she goes, young lady, I'm doing my parents' accent. Young lady, we don't like what you did. We don't like your type in my school. And I got expelled.
Oh.
And I go home and I tell my parents, and my parents are like, you go on your hands and knees and beg forgiveness of the nun. And I go, no. You guys told me we came to this country. One of the reasons we came is for freedom of speech. This cannot be right. She cannot be expelling me for writing an article. And I call the Board of Ed of the state of New Jersey. And an African-American man answered the phone. And he says to me, and I say, is this right? Can they do this? And he goes, young lady, unfortunately they can, because it's a private school and they can do whatever they want. But I'm going to introduce you to a reporter. Tell your story. And I told a reporter, I'm a little crazy. I told the reporter my story. The next day it comes out, Cuban girl gets expelled for First Amendment issue.
Oh.
And my parents are like, why do you have to be a revolutionary? Why? Why? Stop. We are so happy here. Why do you don't create problems? And the head nun calls me and goes, your parents and you need to come to the school right away. And I thought, oh my God, this is the end of my life. We go to the school and the nun's in a great mood. And she didn't like the bad publicity. And she said, you know, I never said I was expelling you. I just said I didn't like what you did. She goes, in fact, I've looked at your grades and you are such a good student. We're going to graduate you 1.5 years early. This is good, right? And I go, it's really good. But here's what happened, Robert. I get home and 17 magazine had left me a message in the voicemail, which tells you how old I am. And it said, we are so proud of you that you stood up for yourself and that you stood up for your writing and that you are, you know, standing up for so many teenagers, that we are giving you the youngest guest editorship in the history of the magazine, which is basically an internship. But that day, my life changed. And I have to say that that's why I honor my African-American friends, because also that man was more empowered than my parents, who were still feeling meek and still feeling like they had no power in this country. And so I went to work at 17, and that job, which was an internship at 15, got me chosen for a teenage version of 60 Minutes as a reporter, which then got me to CBS Network by 19, which then got me to be a man by the name of Norman Lear, who's a very big producer in Hollywood, and his partner, Jerry Parencho, both billionaires, had bought the first Spanish TV station in the country. And they met me because I interviewed them for something for CBS. And they're like, are you Latina? You need to come and work for us. And I go, well, what do you, I thought, oh, good, I'll go to Hollywood and work. No, we bought a little rinky dinky Spanish TV station. I go, ew, I don't want to work for Spanish TV. I'm at CBS. And they both said to me, CBS, that's a factory worker. Who cares if it's CBS? You want to be on the ground floor, employee one of what's going to be a multi-billion-dollar business. And I'm like, well, I'm dead broke and they're rich, so they must be right. They were my other Robert Kiyosaki and the road. And I always say that if I was my son, I may not have made that decision because my ego was about being at CBS and being a reporter, but they changed my mindset and said, being a reporter is not a big deal. Being an entrepreneur, being on the ground floor of something. Imagine if I was employee one of Google, how much would I be worth? So I was employee one of Telemundo, which was a startup. So I did that. And so I was on the ground floor. As they said to me, if you don't even know what you're doing, you're bound to get rich. And I followed people smarter than me. And that's what I think in life. It's not about a job. It's not. Listen to people that are smarter, that are richer, that are more accomplished, that are more grounded. Since we live in a country of grandiosity, everybody sells you a get rich quick. There is no get rich quick. And because I was an immigrant, because my parents had suffered so much, thank God that I didn't let my ego beat my groundedness. And so I went with the winning horse. And I learned that business on OPM. I learned how to run a little TV channel when no one was doing it. And then we actually sold the company. They sold it early on to somebody else who turned it into a network that didn't know what they were doing. And then it went into bankruptcy. And in those in-between years, I realized every company in America is going to need an expert in the Latino market. And I started a little business launching channels abroad for HBO, ESPN, because I knew none of them speak Spanish. None of them want to get on the plane and go to Latin America. That's the other thing. Find a niche that you're good at and that you're the only one that knows it and is interested in it. And by the way, and I say it in my book, Robert, for 4 years, I made no money. I had 3 other side hustles to make money while I built something from nothing and bootstrapped it. And I did it incorrectly. I didn't go get the help that you've given me, Robert, and that I give women. I didn't know what to do. So I had to learn the hard way. 4 years, nothing. And you know why I didn't give up? Because my boss, Jerry Parencho, that was the one that brought Telemundo to begin with, said to me, when I was your age, I started a business. I lowered my overhead. 10 years, I made no money. And in the 10th year, I became a multimillionaire. And so I thought, well, I'm only on year 4. He took him 10 years. So I hung in there. Not that I knew what I was doing. I hung in there because I had a role model. And so that's why for all of you, you have to learn from all of us. And when we tell you we have lived through communism, socialism, right-wing dictatorships, none of these things work. When we tell you the pathway is inside of you, no company, no government, no mate is going to save you.
Thank you very much. I love you. You're the best. Thank you for your courage. Thank you for your courage.
With all my heart. I mean it, Robert. Yeah. What you've done for all of us is, if I could give you the Nobel Prize, I would.
Thank you. I really appreciate it, Natalie. Thanks for telling your story and inspiring the world. And let's keep up the good work. Let's keep up the fight.
Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. And thank you all for watching this episode of Capitalist Manifesto. Thank you.